Welcome back to When Life is Lifing, the podcast. Today we have Dr. Mario Wallace of All Things Strategic. Today he is going to discuss his business and how his business can help your business. Thanks for coming in, Dr. Mario Wallace.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your business.
So, I'm the president of All Things Strategic, and All Things Strategic is a business that focuses on corporate strategy as well as the private sector. Our mission is more driven towards the minority business professional and the minority private sector business owner, small business owner. Our mission is to ensure and make minorities irreplaceable, both in corporate America and in the private sector. And I say that because most small business owners, especially minorities, do not come from generational wealthy families. And given that, and most of them, especially in corporate America, have just student loans up the wazoo. And what I want to do is to ensure that they have the same uh, opportunities for education beyond their college degrees related to certifications and trainings. Given that certifications are so expensive today, especially most of the ones that I've accomplished in the past 15 to 20 years, roughly around 10,000 a certification. What
Yeah.
I want to do is to make those certifications affordable. So what I'm offering to the minority business professional and private sector small business owner is pay what you can, right? Pay
Yeah.
what you uh, given that I have a background in instructional design, I can develop a program um, that is just as rival competitors out there with the highest level of academic rigor in those programs, and I can charge the least amount for those programs.
Wow, that's incredible. And that's definitely a help to the community, especially for entrepreneurs and private sector, because we are trying to save, as an entrepreneur myself, we are trying to be as cost effective as possible and get a maximized result out of it. And you being an entrepreneur, I know you know it as well.
Yeah.
Uh, how are you able to do this?
So, today we have different LMS, learning management systems, different platforms. Uh, so I develop the content, develop the curriculum, and build it out in these platforms, which are open source platforms. So they're not really expensive. The only cost is me, right? In these programs, like one of my program is um, leadership approaches, where I teach people how to be effective leaders in organization, and I teach them based on theory, but I make it more practical. That's an 8 week course in which I meet with them every Monday for 8 weeks. I go over concepts and allow them to take different assessments so they can understand their own leadership style. But
Wow.
the thing about it, since the cost is me, when I say pay what you can, I build everything out. I'm not bringing in other teams of people to do the work for me. I do the work.
Okay.
And that reduces the cost of labor where the program can be affordable for all.
And where do they find this program? Is there a way they can sign up for it, or how does that work?
So I have a link for three different programs. One program is mastering strategic planning, and the other one is mastering leadership approaches. So those are my two 8 week programs. Um, the link is on my website, which is allthingsstrategic.org. Again, allthingsstrategic.org. But on my social media platform, whether it's LinkedIn um, or Facebook, I have videos in which I talk about these programs, and within the caption of the posting, the links are there.
Now, do you help all kinds of companies, or is there a certain company that you try to help more? Help me understand, like, what companies do you help?
So, sorry. Initially, I used to work with academic medical institutions, community health centers, and higher ed institutions.
Okay.
And that was through consulting. What I've done is I pulled back and became more of a business advisor and more of an educator. So I decided to start developing the courses where I target the individual in whichever industry they're he or she is in.
Okay. So
And
you
I
help all industries at this point, and
all in
kind of focus on the minority aspect of it. Is there like a program or something that you, besides the website, like is there like something you may go to, like maybe cities or anything? Do you do anything like that?
um I sometime I go to cities. I used to, right?
Hmm.
So I've worked with different large institutions like the Ohio State University,
Okay.
Texas A&M, University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, University of Arkansas Fayetteville, University of Arkansas Little Rock, Community Health Centers of Arkansas, Community Health Centers of Mississippi. I've gone physically to those places and helped them to understand their direction, their future direction,
Yes.
and build out their strategic plan and align their resources to help them understand, align their budget to their initiatives and their people to their strategies to effectively execute on their strategic plans.
Nice. So how did you get into this? What sparked your interest about it? Have you always been like a strategic planner, uh, or is it something that you just fell into? I always want to know the backstory. I'm nosy.
So, so I have a unique backstory. So I started as a trainer teaching computer lessons on at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, and the chancellor then asked if anybody in the organization um, is familiar with Lean Six Sigma, process improvement, because this was the time when process improvement was the main thing.
Yeah.
Every I had taken Lean Six Sigma classes from Villanova University at the time, so I was one of the few people out of 30,000 people that raised my hand.
Wow.
And he said, "Let's talk to him. Let's get more understanding of what he does." And this leader named Mark Kennedy, he was a vice president of operations at at UAMS, University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. Um, he told me to continue what I'm doing. He actually paid for the rest of my programming, and he hired me as a process improvement person for operations, for campus operations. So for the next year, I started uh, finding efficiencies throughout all of the operational units at the university.
Okay.
That led to another leader coming into the organization who worked in human resources. He heard about what I was doing and that I was using process improvement in a concept called the balanced scorecard. And I had basically Mark Kennedy had given me a book to read on the balanced scorecard, thinking that it was the same thing as process improvement, which it wasn't. He was trying to get 2 for 1 out of my position. So I read the book and I started developing strategy maps for campus operations. And Mark was using those maps to report to the chancellor about the progress. And the new person came in was familiar with the balanced scorecard. So he came to me and he went to Mark and he was like, "Hey, what this guy's doing is amazing, but I can take him further." Uh, so he said, if you allow him to transfer departments, I will promise you, I will send him to get the balanced scorecard certification. At the time, I didn't know that existed. And it's a Harvard Business School certification by Kaplan and Norton. As long as he can work with strategy, not in campus operations, but for the global institution. So Mark agreed. I agreed to it. I was hired by Jeff Reisinger um, in human resources, and I started to develop strategy for the entire institution. He sent me to get my balanced scorecard certification, which was that was one of the hardest one I've ever received, because not only do you study, you you go to class and you study and you take a written exam, which is like 200 questions, but you also have to write 3 essays.
Wow.
All of this is within 2 hours, and
Mm,
you send it to Kaplan and Nord, and they have like students at Harvard to grade those essays to ensure that you really conceptualize strategy.
mm.
So all of this drove my passion for process improvement strategy, um, as well as change management. Those are the three catalysts, the two catalysts, Jeff Risinger and Mark Kennedy, that drove my passion. Because initially, my drive was rhetoric and writing,
Yes.
technical writing.
that's a night and day difference there. Wow. You have to have a different kind of layout in your brain for strategic thinking. And
Right.
so, did you have to manipulate things in your brain to get to thinking the way you are, or were you always just that kind of challenging thought process that you already had, and you just developed it more?
Well, I had the challenge process, but it wasn't in the numbers, right? Like you know, Lean Six Sigma is using statistical equations and the balanced scorecard, looking into the future and trying to make the future make sense in the present.
Yeah,
That that was a steep learning curve for me for several years. You know, how I got practice is I was working at that large organization. There
yeah.
was over 50 business units, and because of that, I was always asked to come in and work on strategy. So that was my training ground for me. If it wasn't for that, it probably would have taken me years to get to the level I am today. It was the practice and the failure within the practice that strengthened my knowledge and understanding, of how to.
So that's basically you conditioned yourself through treacherous conditionings, basically baptism by fire. uh,
Baptism.
just learning the processes and trial and error, and you had so much room of trial and error to even to just to find the mark where it would take for you to. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people think that it just comes natural. You may have a natural ability for numbers, but to learn what those numbers mean in strategically thinking is a totally different process. And what you're talking about is what makes the most sense of baptism by fire. And I definitely understand that, because I've had to condition myself for all kind of rigorous training. So
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you mentioned that, because I don't want people to think that this process is easy.
Yeah.
So
You
so
know, and
once you capture a business,
mhm.
once you capture a business, what's the first step that that business needs to do for them to be successful through your program?
Once I capture a business, so are you saying like once I start working with?
Yeah.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, basically, once you start working with a company and you focus in and zoom in on their what they the information they give you, what's their first step after you have the information? What is it that they need to do?
So it depends if it's change, if they're looking to implement a new program like Workday from a change lens, if they're seeking to change their entire organizational structure and look toward the future, like changing from a process driven organization to an innovative driven organization, it's them helping me to understand the culture. I can't move forward with an organization unless I truly understand the culture within the organization. And once they help me to really understand the culture in which these things have to exist in, because here's the thing: strategy is here and culture is here. If they're not worked simultaneously, culture will disrupt strategy.
Hmm.
Culture will disrupt change. Culture will disrupt any type of initiative that you're trying to bring forward, because culture is just that powerful.
Yes.
So I have to understand the culture first. And once I get a clear understanding of culture, then I know how to approach the organization and move in to help them start moving the pieces around.
Wow. So you have to understand the full business.
I have to, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I was. at at an organization maybe 2 years ago, and when I first got there and started working with, now listen, this organization had, it was more a higher ed institution and a medical science institution. Combined, there was over 60,000 employees and over 40,000 students.
Wow.
Right, so I had to shift the entire culture. Um, and what I kept hearing from my first day, the organization is not going to buy into this. But I was brought in for that same. For, I was brought in because the president wanted to go in this new direction, but I kept hearing that the organization is not going to buy into it. And what in those situations, the people who say things like that, you really have to be careful in working with them, because they're not saying the organization is not going to buy into it for a reason. They're telling you that they don't buy into it, and and that can lead to your initiative derailing within 6 to 8 to 10 months. An organization as large as that one, and the type of money they have, they can easily decide to go in a different direction. So you have to understand the bureaucrats that control the culture in order to shift and change the culture.
Wow. So yeah, that's so not only are you almost redeveloping a company, but you also got to sell them back their own because they're asking for help, and I that's very difficult when somebody comes to you for help and you actually have the solution, but then you have to sell them the solution when you've already done the research and went the extra mile to know what the solution is.
That's right.
And I'll tell you, it's being a coach, man. I've dealt with that as well. Like, you came to me, and I'm telling you, this is what it is, and so it's all about fixing broken processes, and
Mhm.
with you, it even goes even more deeper because
Mhm.
you learn the culture, then you learn the numbers, and you make that gel.
You
And
have That's the recipe.
yeah.
That's it.
And so
But
your success rate when they allow you, when they allow you to do what it is that you do strategically, their business probably just grows.
yes, because what at the corp, because I do two parts. One is work with corporate business professionals, but the other is working with small businesses in the private sector. And I'm gonna tell you about that piece. But with the corporate business professionals, when I work with those in large scale organizations, I make sure that everything is aligned to the strategy, and that is what creates the value, and that's what allow the organization to soar, is to connect every person in that organization to my initiative, where everybody is moving in the same directions. If you think of like 10 different departments, let's talk about this. If you think of academic medicine, you have research
Okay.
division, you have um, educational division, and you have the medical division, right? And and that's where medical practices take place, right? Like hospital and things like that.
Yeah.
All three of them go in separate directions, right? One is looking for students, one is looking for patients, and one is looking for innovation in research in
Yeah.
healthcare. You have to find a way to connect the three where they all are working in unison towards the same goals. They have independent components based on their own independent industry.
Correct.
But for the organization as a whole, they need to march together. We need to streamline budgets. We need to streamline people. We need to do cross-functional initiatives. There's a lot of things that need to take place in
Correct.
order for so that's what's missing. The organizations are all working in silo until I connect the pieces.
Wow. That's that's amazing that I didn't realize it really got that deep until I started talking to you. And yesterday, you really gave me a lot of insight on strategic thinking on things that I've never even thought about with my own business. And I was like, wow, like this guy, you got it. Well, it's a little bit past the corporate. You said you wanted to speak on entrepreneurs.
Yes. So so I have years, I mean, working with Goldman Sachs 10K small business program. And what
Mhm.
I've learned and just doing consulting for them, business advising for them, is the elements that drives performance within the small business owner. So, and the core thing is understanding your financials, the financial statements, the balance sheet, the profit and loss or income statement, and cash flow statements. What I do with small business owners is help them to understand their financial data, help them to interpret their financial data. And once they understand that piece, then they soar,
Yeah.
right? Most of us as entrepreneurs, we lean on our CPA, we lean on our bookkeeper. Our bookkeeper tracks everything month to month. Our CPA work with us during tax season. The problem is what I noticed is that the small business owner is never working with the either the CPA or the bookkeeper to interpret their information. So recently, I worked with somebody who told me that they make 35 to 40,000 a month in a restaurant, but she couldn't understand why her account was always in the negative.
Hmm.
So I said, "Have you talked to your CPA? Have you talked to your bookkeeper?" I said, "Well, they're not explaining it to me." So I said, "Let me see your books." I went through a profit and loss statement. She was making 35 to 40,000 consistently across the board.
Yeah.
But when I got down to her expenses and when I got down to her net income, it was in the negative. So her expenses was taking up all the revenue. So the amount of money she was bringing in, she was also expensing out.
So cost of goods, and
Cost of goods, staffing, payroll, rent.
payroll is probably the largest expense you can have next to cost of goods. Just looking at, I look at a lot of P and Ls, and so
Yeah,
that's, and you have to look at the categories that everything is under. So once you categorize that, you look at the cost of goods, you look at the labor, which is supposed to be the greatest, your feeder, and
right.
then look at that NOI there, that net income. You're like, well, where did the money go? Well, let's go back through this P&L and see exactly what you spent. And those things really have to be detailed. And so
They
you
have,
have to know every part of your business, like you said.
but see, the thing is, listen to me. Now, this is honest. 99% of the people I work with have no knowledge of a P&L, how to interpret, what does it mean, and they put 100% trust in their bookkeepers and CPA. I'm not saying not to trust their bookkeepers and CPAs, but I need them to understand their own numbers because if who's going to the bank, who's looking for, who's going to lenders, they are.
Yes,
Who needs to interpret their information to investors? They do,
exactly.
right? So once I get them past that, we get into understanding how to streamline the operational processes to create some type of turnkey business, how to build out an exit strategy, how to assess their leadership and how to effectively lead small businesses, how to also how to market their business. So I take them through all those elements, and once I let their hands go, they soar.
Oh, wow. And that's what it takes is understanding your business. And just for the listeners, I know I said P&L, but profit and loss statement. Uh,
Okay.
Sometimes I get it, but I want to make sure that the listeners understand. If you're a business owner, small or large, you should have a statement every month that somebody is creating or you create so that you know where your money is going.
That's right.
Because that is the most important thing. You need to know your cost of goods, cost of labor, what you have expensed out, uh,
But see,
electric, water, gas,
but
everything that actually happens in your business every day, just like at your own home. I treat my household like a business. Hey, look, I got this, that's going out. I got this coming in. What's my net? Because the only thing that matters is what you take home, not anything past that.
but here's the thing: what they the first thing they don't understand is the difference between revenue and net. they're assuming that they're taking home the revenue,
Sales.
sales. They think that that's how much money they've made in order to take home and put in their savings or wherever they're going to put it. But when I take them down to the bottom of the P&L and I show them their net income,
Yeah. So and that's the thing. You have the sales, you have the gross profit, because you have cost of goods and everything. So the gross profit here, but then even after the gross profit here, you still have bills to pay. And so once those bills are paid, now you're down here at the net profit. This is
that's
really, so you might have did 100,000 in sales, but at
right.
the end of
That's
the day,
right.
you took home $1,200. After everything, this is what you really made.
That is true.
And it
That
gets gory like that after you expense out all the people you paid, and so like I know business owners now that don't have a P&L. They know what they make in sales because they know what the check they get.
yes,
But at the
yes,
end of the day, I mean, and they're still very profitable and they're very successful. But to know these things can help you understand your business even more and make that bottom line dollar greater. Because
hmm
these are controllable things. You have your non-controllables, but then you have your controllables. Is that right?
yes, yes, yes. If they understood their P&L, then they can, like for instance, if there's a restaurant that has maxed out all the potential of that space, right? That means that the restaurant owner now can consider a new growth opportunity. Like, how can I grow from here? The restaurant owner may say, maybe I need to get a larger restaurant. But the restaurant owner may also say, well, maybe I don't offer a particular service like a take home service
Yes.
where people can come and pick up their product, prior to Uber Eats and things like that. So, or, maybe I can offer that and I can increase that's a new revenue line for my company. But how do you get there? You can only get there by understanding your P&L. Based on my net income, do I see an area where I can take money from my net income profits and invest in a new opportunity, or
Yes.
to go to a lender to get money, right? Um, or an investor. But you can only start making those decisions and choices if you're trying to interpret your P&L.
And if you understand your business,
That's right.
because every single one of those decisions that you came up with always comes with sacrifice. So
Yes.
even when you're taking money from yourself to invest, you're sacrificing this little pot here. If you go to a bank and you take their interest rate, well, you're able to grow, but you got to remember you got to put that in your P&L as well. Or if you
Right.
go to an investor, obviously they want a piece of the dividends at the bottom line too. So you're taking away from yourself. Everything comes with a sacrifice when growth happens, and it makes it a little bit uncomfortable. But it if it makes sense to make more dollars, then obviously all those ways are ways to do it.
That's right. That's right. And when I work with a small business owner, I advise them more so than consult. So I help them to understand what I'm seeing, what I'm interpreting. I tell them to bring in their CPA, bring in their bookkeeper, so I can talk to them and have everybody in the room to talk through it. But as I advise them, I educate them at the same time. My thing is to strengthen the thinking, the strategic thinking of the minority small business owner. I'm not just consulting them for pay and then leave. No,
Right.
I want them to be irreplaceable and thrive as small business owners. So I advise more so than I consult.
That,
Consulting is basically doing the work for them and moving on. No, I work with them so they can get it and understand it. And then once they get to the point where I feel that they're very confident in what they're doing, then I walk away.
now, do you ever do a follow up at a 90-day follow up, a 180-day follow up, just to see how your plan went? I like to do that myself. That's why I'm asking.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I do more of a 180-day follow up. Whatever the metrics whatever they were struggling with, I tend to track, to stay in contact with them and track that information to make sure they stay on course because the you know the small business industry is the engine of our economy in the United States.
Yeah.
This is where the gross domestic product, all of this comes from the small business sector. The amount of employees, that's the new employees in the market, comes from the small business sector. So, and minorities take up like 17% of the small business sector.
Hmm.
I need them to sustain. I need them to continue to do the good work that they can, and I can only do that by checking back in with them, uh, consistently to make sure they're on task.
That's great. Now, how can people find you besides all things strategic .org? How else can they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn at Mario Wallace on LinkedIn, uh, on Facebook at Mario Wallace on Facebook as well, and Dr. Mario Wallace on TikTok.
Yes, and I follow you on all of those. So
Okay.
you give out a lot of great information. Being on those platforms, you're not even charging for it. So like you're still giving out great information because you obviously have a passion and you want to see businesses succeed. But to get the full course meal, they need to reach out to you. And I think you have the formula and you're willing to work with them and help them get those certifications uh, without paying what they would pay at a huge institution. Because I've paid for certifications and it's not cheap. So I definitely understand, and I thank you so much for being on the show today. And I'm hoping that the entrepreneurs that's watching this will reach out and at least give you the opportunity to make them great again.
Thank you, thank you. I'm excited that you actually reached out to me. I've been following your podcast for the past 2 months, and yeah, I'm excited to be here and to be able to share this
Yeah,
information.
thank
Thank you for inviting me.
No, you have given such a great interview here today, and I really appreciate it. I learned so much just sitting here talking to you. And yesterday when we spoke, I learned a lot, and we're just going to continue to develop that relationship, and hopefully we can help each other get to the promised land, right? So
That's right. That's right.
so thank you guys again for tuning in. Again, this is Mario Wallace, the great Mario Wallace. You can check him out on allthingsstrategic.org. You can find him on LinkedIn and on TikTok. And please check in with him, see if he can help you. And we really appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in to When Life is Life in the podcast. Bye
Thank
for
you.
now.